Hey there, welcome to episode 18 of this Koala Sampler tutorial series, and today what we're talking about is processing outside of Koala. Now, my initial sort of video and take on this whole series was about doing things on a budget and keeping things so that like anyone could kind of get involved, and this doesn't go beyond that. But what it does require would be, to purchase some more apps and other things that you can use on your iPad. But I did want to cover it because I think maybe you'll get to a point where you've made a few songs in Koala and you've done a few things, but you'd like to maybe just go that extra little step into sort of polishing some of your mixes. But you don't necessarily want to leave the comfort of your iPhone or your iPad and have to move into like bigger studio things. So what I've got open here is just a very quick little like sequenced loop. We're at 75 BPM. I just want to show you some of the project here before we open it in something else, and I'll just play you a little bit of the loop. Just a really simple thing I was working on. It's not mixed, haven't done anything with it. It's just purely for the purposes of this exercise. So the other app that I'm going to show you, or the first of the other apps I'm going to show you, is one called Aum, and that's AUM. And if we go in here, I will open that up. So one of the big things with Koala, as I've explained throughout this sort of video series, there are no sort of mixer window, there are no like sort of EQ functions. There are a lot of things that are missing from like a basic DAW that you might expect. And Aum is an application, it does a hell of a lot of things. I'm only going to cover what I use it for in terms of like with Koala, because I don't want to start getting into a whole series of like Aum videos. But what it does is it allows us to bring Koala in a way that will let us start having some of those features that are missing from Koala Sampler itself. So what we'll start off with here is just by clicking in the middle. So when you open Aum, this is what you get. Do this. Click audio here, because that's what we want to set up. And the first thing I want to bring in is an instance of Koala Sampler. So I'm going to go here, and I'm going to find audio unit extension, because that's what it is. I'm going to find Koala Sampler, and it's going to load Koala Sampler into this first track for me. And then when I click on Koala here, I get Koala Sampler inside of Aum, but completely able to use it just as I would normally outside of Aum. The only difference is that because we have Interapp audio set, which was something I talked about in the settings video, then we have linked these two apps together. So instead of it using Koala as its sort of main host for the BPM, it's actually using Aum. So our little project that I just played you a clip of at the beginning, I'm going to load that in, and then I need to set the BPM. So it was important to remember what the BPM is of that original project, which was 75 BPM, because that's what we're going to set in here. But first, let's load that project in, and I think I'd called it UI. I'm not sure why. But yes, here is the project that we were just listening to at the beginning. Now, if I play it, it's going to sound strange because it's at 120 BPM, so it's not going to work out well. So we need to set inside Aum our BPM. Go in here, and I can double click on it, and I can just set that value to 75 BPM. Now, it also disables our transport controls here because Aum is now acting as our host. So any recording or anything else we want to do, I'm going to use Aum to do that. Now, what you could do, because Koala opens really nicely in here, and I'm going to show you how to separate all the tracks out so you can do a bit more like mixing and mastering. You could essentially just start building your tracks in here. There's no reason to have to build them in Koala and then open it. I'm just doing it that way sort of for like speed and efficiency here. But yeah, we can move this around as well. So if we just want to get a few things out the way, of course you can like close them, but sometimes I just want to shift them around. So I can just use this to like move things for a second. But we've now set the tempo in the project here. If I press play inside of Aum now, that's what's controlling this, so we should get to hear our sequence. Oops. Slippy fingers. So that is now running through Orm as the host. That means that the audio is coming through here, and I've got a bunch of things about where I want to send audio to, different destinations and things like that. At the moment, this is being currently sent to my headphones, and that's what I'm listening to. As I play this again, though, what it gives me is this main channel fader mixer, so I can bring the volume down of my mix here. And we'll just have to set that back to the beginning. And what you'll also notice is we have like a slightly clearer sort of overall volume meter here. And if you're used to working in the usual things like RMS, LUFS, whatever it is that you like to sort of measure your audio in, you'll be more familiar with this in a kind of DAW sort of mixing sense. I don't think it's the best. I still think Orm could use like a slightly nicer, bigger meter that you can kind of be a little bit more accurate with, but it'll do the job. So that's one part of the setup. That's getting everything to come through one channel. But what we want to be able to do with our Koala Sampler like set here, our beat, is I want to be able to, in a way with better control. So inside of Koala itself, if we have our little pads, as you've seen, I can set my volumes here, and when I'm making a beat inside a Koala, that's all I'm doing. I'm setting my volumes purely by ear, because it's the only sort of real visual representation I've got of the volume sound there. I just mix these as best as I can, and then the whole thing gets exported out. But if you want more control over that, you want some sliders, you want to be able to see some kind of audio coming through here, we want to essentially be able to use Orm as a host and separate all of these elements out into separate mixer tracks here. And that's what we'll do next. So I'm going to close this for a second because we don't need it just now. And what we need to do is we need to add another audio track in here. And this time what we're going to do is we're going to use a multibus audio unit instance. So you'll notice now when I use Koala Sampler here, it says A1, and that's cool, and I'll tell you why in a second. So this is now going to start splitting everything out for us, and we're going to get it all set up. Everything here at the moment still just going to the headphones, that's fine. What I need to be able to do is set the output source. So it doesn't really advertise it too much inside of Koala Sampler, but what you have actually got is like 8 output channels from Koala. Now, they're not really, I tried to see if I could set them up to use them with like my desktop and stuff like that. I can't really. I can use them inside of this app, which is why I use Orm. And you have to bear in mind that output 1 will always be the first channel here, and everything that you hear, kind of like your main mix bus inside of like a DAW, everything runs through this first channel. So everything else after this is like separate. And you can see that this one is set to audio output 2, which is perfect. That's what we want. We want to create another version of this. And I'm just trying to remember how you do that, which I think, you click on the bottom here, then you do duplicate. And you can see that it's labeled 2 and it's labeled 3 now. And if we go in here, it's set to output 3. So just by duplicating this, it's already setting it up for us as we're not having to route things particularly. We can do it again. And I'm not going to do all like 8 channels. I don't particularly need to. We'll just do, I don't know, let's just say we've got this extra. Let's do it one more time. So we have to think about this first channel here with Koala loaded as our main output like mix bus. Now, one thing to bear in mind is that if we go into Koala here and if we play our track, our little loop again, when I go to these performance effects, do some like filtering, whatever it is I apply there in effects, those effects are only applied to this channel. Now, there is a way around that if you like Koala effects. You can get the effects rack from Koala as like a standalone version, and I think is it AUV3, I think, whatever the format is. And then you can load it in, and I'll show you how to load those in a second. So you could load and get the effects playing on some of these, but just keep that in mind that that effects rack only affects your main sort of master output bus on this main channel here. That's something to keep in mind. So now that we've got some places to put our separate audio, we need to tell Koala where to send that audio. And when we come into here, let's go to our samples. And we know that this is our drums. Let's just take a look at the edit window. And what appears in the edit window once you're inside of here is this channel button. Now that you don't see normally, but once it's here, I can then send this. So I can say, okay, I want the drums to go to channel 2, which is going to show up here. And then what is this? Like the main melody loop, I assume. I'm going to send that one to 3. And then what is this? Just like a bit of a one shot. We've got some static crackle here, but I think just for the purposes of this, let's send this one out to, let's send that one to 4. And now when we close this and we play things, let's get it to start again. You'll see this master volume isn't affecting things anymore. But if I do this, now we just have our drums coming through this channel and that other little instrument that we've got sort of playing here, which is, I can't remember where that is. Is it in this one? We can label all these and be sort of more clear with it, but you can see what I'm saying. We now have the ability to actually mix like we would in like a DAW. This is my, main loop sample here. Can turn that up. Just gives me a lot more creativity in terms of, mixing for starters. Bring the drums back in. All that kind of good stuff. So that's super cool. The next thing that it allows you to do is do some extra audio processing, and that's a little bit again what this sort of video is about. So whenever you've got a separate channel like this, we get more into the realms of like DAW and the ability to add plugins. So when I click on these little icons here, I can load certain things in, and Orm's really cool because it comes with a bunch of things to do some sort of like processing. So stereo processing, we can pan and do a whole bunch of things in here. You've got filters and EQs and all that kind of stuff. There's even saturation, hard clips, a limiter. Things that obviously Koala doesn't come with, so you can export out an entire Koala track, and by the time you add some of like Koala's onboard compression and stuff like that and raise the volume, normalize it, you can get a pretty decent sort of loud master out. But if you want a particular sort of target level like the -11 LUFS for Spotify or whatever it is that you're sort of aiming for, you're going to struggle to do that with just Koala, and this app will allow you to add some of those things in. So I think it's AUV3 or something like that, or AU3 even, maybe there's no V in it, but we have the ability to then get all of these other plugins. Now some of these that I've got, like this Magic Switch, I think was free, the Roast Beef was free, Rough Rider Compression was free, can't remember. Some I paid for, some are completely free. But now that we have these separate channels, so like our drums, for example, and we can do the usual thing like you can do in any DAW, I can just like solo these drums. If I've got everything playing, I could just listen to just the drums. Back. Sorry, soloed the wrong track there. Let's just say we just want to listen to just our drums. I can solo these. And now I can start bringing plugins in to affect each of these like separate channels. So, I don't know, say the drums we wanted to add some, like this roast beef plugin's really good just for adding like grit and dirt to like the drums and kind of beefing out the sound. And each of these has a little window we can open, we can play around with it, we could up the drive. And you get the idea. We can swipe up here and we can add as many of these plugins as we want to this particular channel. So let's say the next thing we wanted to do would be to, I don't know, add a little bass, do some EQing of the drums. I've got like a really basic like EQ plugin here that I could do that. We can play our drums again. play around with the high end. Obviously, not trying to do anything good with that, but you can see where I'm going with this. So of course I can now process all of my drums, and sometimes I'll even just use Orm like this. I could take a sample out of Koala. Let's say I'm working with a set of drums and I just can't do what I want inside of Koala with like filtering tricks and layering and stuff to get it where I want. I can just export that sample out, bring it into Orm, add some effects in here, and then send it back into Koala and just have it, processed and ready. But I think this is sometimes what I do just towards the end of a project if I really want to get a bit more of a polished sound out of Koala, and also like my LUFS and limiting level and all that kind of thing. I can do that. And as I said, it's just a case of simply adding the extra plugins as you go, and there's no limitation on these as well. We can just keep adding things. I don't know what else we could put some compression in here on top of these drums. And if you're listening to something and you just want to turn it off and on, we can just slide these across just to sort of like get them out of the way. As I said, this isn't going to be a tutorial about that. I just kind of wanted to finish off this Koala series talking about the possibility of like next steps and what else you can do if you find some of the limitations just a little bit too much and you just want to go up a little step, just get a little bit more polished, get your LUFS level and all that kind of thing. And so, yeah, kind of speaking of that, let's say we've got everything, kind of mixed and mastered. You can set another like output bus or something in here to send all the audio out of. Or even if we just said, what can we do here? Let's close that out. Let's close Orm for a second. Where are we? Let's just swipe up and get rid of Orm. You can see all the other apps that I shouldn't really have open at the same time, but I do. Then let's go back here. I just want to open Orm again. Let's say we had our finished track inside of here. I don't necessarily need to split it. Even if you just had one like mix down out of Koala, but you just wanted to add some extra stuff in here. If I go to File Player, I must have some sort of track in here that we could use. What have we got? We got anything that looks like a full song? Well, let's try this loop. And this is the cool thing, like even if you've done like your mix down, you've got an audio file, I don't have to bring in like Koala itself. I can just bring in the exported audio file here. I can click loop if I want to keep that on, and if I know the BPM, I can set it so it just loops, well. I miss you so. I miss you so. So that was just a little loop that I was working on, just slicing up a sample. If I wanted to get that ready to be kind of to Spotify or wherever, and I want to get my LUFS level, I can do that in here doing the same thing using some of these extension units. So one of the first things I would put in would be, say, like a limiter. If like I thought the like mix down was good, I could bring in a limiter. Then I could add in, say, like this Ulean audio meter, and I can open these up at the same time, so I can get this up, and I can get this up. And then it's just a case of letting that play through. I miss you so much. And then what I can do is I can monitor things inside of here. I can use this like spectrum analyzer, I can look where the bass is hitting, and then I can start applying like where I want my ceiling, whether I want any saturation on this limiter, whatever else it is. If I've got a target in mind here, I can just start cranking up my limiter. I miss you so much. I miss you so. And you can see we're starting to hit a, -10 like sort of LUF value. Now don't get me wrong, you can't just crank your limiter up and create a bunch of chaos, because you need to think about headroom and all those other sort of things. I just wanted to show you that there were some possibilities for taking something out of Koala in a slightly more sort of polished fashion, and using an app like Orm, which again, I don't know the value of it because I can't see it in the App Store, but it's not expensive. It's definitely not expensive. and it allows you to do all of this, plus a ton of other things. If you watch videos on YouTube for Orm, there's like so many of them. But I just wanted to just do one final video in this series talking about the possibilities beyond Koala. And this is definitely one way that I could do that. If I was trying to really get something a little bit more polished, ready for Spotify, I want my LUFS level, I want to do some limiting and some things that just Koala just can't do. This would be a good way to bring it in. Even, as I said, if you're struggling with mixing, you want like a better way of using these sliders to mix your track, remember that you've got those output buses inside of Koala, and yeah, you can just, you know, step your game up a little bit from there. So I think with that concludes this video series. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope it's been useful. I tried to break it into as many sections as I could. One, so that we had enough time to talk about everything in detail, and two, so that if you're not interested in certain aspects, you can just skip to the video that you do care about, and hopefully, yeah, it was like an easy thing to sort of navigate your way through. Anyway, I've enjoyed it. I will catch you guys in whatever the next video is that I put out, and I'll see you then. Take care.